I guess I had about 20 assignments submitted, so that's good. Reading over your answers this morning, felt like some people understood it a little better than others, but I can tell most of you guys gave it a good shot. Okay. So maybe I can help with that a little bit today. But what I really want to get into is these three political philosophies of these three different men that lived during slightly different times, but are all writing about a social contract theory in their view. Now, it's always important to remember when we talk about this, what is going on? What type of governments are they living under at the time? Okay, because some of these words, and if you look at John Locke, especially, what he is doing is committing treason. You know, in the face of the divine rights, he is saying that doesn't exist. Okay, and so actually when he wrote the second treatise on civil government, it was not published for 10 years until after he wrote it, out of fear for his life. Okay, so but let's start with Hobbes. Okay, Hobbes and Locke are both English. Okay, and Hobbes was born in 1588, so we understand he is under the divine right rule. Okay, King Charles I struggled between the King Charles and the Parliament. Friend of the royal family, highly critical of Parliament's position during the English Civil War, but he did oppose the divine right of kings. Okay, but thought that we needed one. Okay, his most famous work is the Leviathan. You see that Leviathan in there in that second paragraph? Any guys ever heard of that word before? Yeah.
It was in, it's not, is it Revelation? Bible?
It is in the Bible.
It's, what's the name of it? It's about the prophecy. It's in the book of.
What is the Leviathan?
Isn't it the whale that swallowed the Jonah?
No, it is. I'm going to go here next. Now come back. Yes, it's a sea monster. Like all consuming. Okay. So the term Leviathan, used in a political science term, is an all-consuming government, all-controlling government, a Leviathan, a sea monster. Okay. So some people, like very conservative people, might see our government right now as somewhat of a Leviathan, if you will. In fact, I think those of you guys looking for books, Mark Levin has a book called The Leviathan. Okay, and he's obviously using political philosophy from 400 years ago, 500 years ago. Okay, to back up his claims. Okay. So humans were essentially very complicated organic machines responding mechanically to stimuli of the world in accordance with the universal laws of nature. Okay, this is, all right. We hear this in all three of this. In all three of these philosophies, this thing called the state of nature. Yeah? What in the world is that? What are they talking about with the state of nature? What you got? Okay, what is a state of nature? Like, how do you describe that? Yeah, every man for themselves. Kind of like the law of I like to think of it as the law of the jungle. You know what I mean? Like you go to the jungle and who's the king of the jungle? Yeah, do lions really live in the jungle? So maybe the tiger, yes? You with me on this? And everything else is below that. And there's a pecking order, right? And it's about survival in the jungle. So the way that Hobbes looks at human nature, at man, do you have an optimistic view of man or kind of a pessimistic view of man? He doesn't think very highly of us, does he? Nope. He says we're self-interested. Okay, let's dissect that word. What does that mean? I know you guys know this because you've taken religion class.
My truth is different from your truth.
My truth is the truth. Right? Now, your truth might be different than mine. Yes. But my truth, what feels good to me, is truth. Everybody comes up with their own, right? Okay. Now, the fact that you guys have all been raised in the Catholic Church and in Catholic schools your life, you've been trained a certain way about what's right and what's wrong. So your truth might be different than, say, somebody that's never even been to church. Yes? There are a lot of people in this country that don't go to church, never been exposed to God. Today, what do we call this? In modern times, what do we call it? Subjective truth. Huh? Could be opinions. Huh? What kind of relativism? Moral. Yeah, good. You guys learn about this? Yeah, with swords, not religion class? I remember my kids learning this in religion class in middle school.
Swords is a religion.
Kind of like my kids' science class in middle school was religion class. We talked about that?
No.
Yeah. Well, you know how those fundamentalist Protestants are, right? So, you've heard this before, the young earth theory? Like the earth is 6,000 years old?
Oh, yeah.
That's what they taught my kids in middle school.
What?
I'm not kidding.
Where?
Central Christian Academy, 21st and Rock.
They still teach that now?
Huh?
Do they still teach that now?
Yeah, I think so.
What's a young theory?
I was really worried about my kids coming to Carroll with science. Like, I was worried they were not going to be prepared for science. It didn't really affect her. Daughter studied chemical engineering, so she's okay. My son, I think he did okay. He just did okay in everything. So, but that's okay. He did okay. He graduated. He's fine. But yeah, I mean, like, so this is a interesting view. I don't know when the dinosaurs lived in that 6,000 years, or you know,
They were very
but
They were short.
I don't know how you explain that. So I tried to tell my kids, I'm like, okay, this is what they're teaching.
Don't we have like people that have like written stuff more than 6,000 years ago?
I mean, Herodotus is like the first historian, but that wasn't 6,000.
It just seems way too.
So Adam and Eve were 6,000 years ago. Yeah.
Like fossils and stuff.
Oh yeah, we have fossils. Yeah, carbon dating. But if you read about this, and you can read about it, okay, they're saying that carbon dating is not. It's not scientifically. I'm just telling you, okay? Now, how did I get on these fundamentalist principles? Okay. Yeah, more relativism. So, guys, this basically means that you justify your behavior because it's what you want, right? So, this is how he sees us, okay? Subjectivism doctrine that knowledge and values are dependent on and limited by your subjective experience. He said that good and evil have no objective meaning, rather, they just describe what humans are naturally drawn to or repelled by. In addition, he argued that since we are mechanical, humans are exclusively self-interested. Now, I like this part where he talks about why people have children. You remember that? People have children for selfish reasons. So they'll have somebody take care of them when they're old, right? Or to have somebody to work, labor. I want you to think about this. Say your family came out here. Have any of you guys seen 1883, the precursor to Yellowstone on Apple streaming? I gotta tell you, if you have Apple streaming, watch 1883. It is fantastic. Guys, it is shocking the number of ways to die in the West in the 1880s. And they show every way you can conceivably die. You know, rattlesnake bite, trying to cross a river in a covered wagon with people that don't know how to swim, immigrants that don't know how to swim. Okay? Of course, Native Americans, you know, and then, you know, horse thieves and just bad people with guns that would take advantage of you and kill you. It's really good. Now, that's the Wild West. Is that the jungle? Is that the state of nature on the West? There's no law. There's no civil society. Okay? So, having kids, if you came out here and farmed in Kansas in the 1880s, you needed to have kids. Big families, yes? You needed labor. And you needed them to help take care of you when you could no longer farm. So, I mean, Hobbes isn't really too far off on this. Today, we would look at this and say, well, that's not why I had kids. I had kids so I could live vicariously through them. Kidding. But a lot of parents do, am I right? Like, you know, my kids were in sports, and I'm like, let's go coach them up and then live through their experiences. Anybody have parents like that?
Coach,
Yeah.
do you have a link for Just Right?
He's already here?
Yes.
Oh my gosh. Yes.
Okay, you want me to come get it, or
Yeah, I'm kind of busy.
I'll be right there?
Sorry. We had this guy, huh?
That is so cool.
So this guy, Just Right, he's just a fan. I've never met him before. He contacted me and says, hey, coach, can I get a state ring? Can I buy one? Yeah. Yeah, it's a little creepy. But, I mean, he's a nice guy. He's just been a Carroll fan for a long time. Yep. Personalized. Yeah, third time's charm.
Are you gonna wear all three with the
First ring I wasn't real happy with. Second one I liked, but I really like this one. You get a little, can write something on the inside.
What'd you say?
Number 3. This year, we read. Not ready yet, but we got some more.
Are they all fit for one finger, or are they all for different fingers?
Everybody got sized.
No, I mean like, are you gonna have one? Are you gonna be able to wear one?
Okay, so I tried this out last night. Yes. Sorry, Jenny. Okay. So, there. I can fit them all on my fingers.
Kind of hard to write like that.
Yeah, and they clink together. It's kind of awkward. Maybe I'll wear them on a Friday or something.
Or
Yeah.
Spirit Day. If you go to any
Spirit Day.
weddings,
Huh?
go to any weddings, you should just.
Yeah. Well, maybe when I go in the Hall of Fame. Okay. All right, so, guys, this is pretty interesting, right? Like, now, the one more thing with this, he says that humans are rational. Okay, and this is important. Now, he puts an end at the.
Yeah, I would.
Okay. Oh, by the way, on the test, you're going to have to compare and contrast Hobbes and Locke's views on social contracts. Okay. So I'm writing some of the important things up here. Okay. The people are selfish, right? Self-interested, subjective. They come up with their own right and wrong, what we call moral relativism today. But they are also rational. So what form of government does Hobbes propose for us? An absolute monarchy. Now, it says in here he didn't believe in the divine right. Is he going to come out and say that to the king's face? I don't think so. Okay? But he feels like because of our human nature, how awful we are, how selfish we are, how reactionary we are. Left to our own devices, we will kill each other in a state of nature. So we need somebody strong and powerful, a Leviathan, if you will, to control us. A powerful government. Okay? So this is a rational choice. Because remember, social contract is an agreement between the governed people and the government. Okay? This is a rational choice to have an absolute monarch, to have a dictator, if that makes sense. Now, let me propose this to you all. If you were to poll the American people in 1970, what percentage of the American people believed in God? That number was over 90%. Those that believed in Jesus as God was over 85%. How are those numbers looking in 2023 in this country? It's dropping, yes? Rapidly. And if you look at Europe, guys, it's almost as Christianity is dead. I mean, beautiful cathedrals all over Europe sit near empty during Mass. People don't go to church. Is it through church and through God that we learn objective truth? So if you lose God, and this is actually what human beings are, and we are in many ways, do we not need stronger and stronger government to control us? I mean, look at our society. Is government, by its very nature, going to have to become more controlling over us because we don't know how to act on our own? It's kind of scary. But would you say that's kind of become the case? Okay, so, I mean, I think this is an important discussion to have. So I'll kind of continue this as we get into Locke. Okay. So, yeah, it's his most famous quote there is at the top. Life in a state of nature would be nasty, brutish, and short. We would tear each other apart in a state of nature. So we form a social contract, making the rational choice of a authoritarian dictator to control our combative and selfish ways. Okay? That sums up Hobbes. Good? So let's slide over to the next page and talk about John Locke. Now, I know Mr. Swords probably talked to you guys a little bit about these folks. I know he did. Now, at the top quote, it says, the law of nature, which is given to us by who? God, commands that we do no harm to others in regard to their life, health, liberty, or possessions. We all have the right to life, liberty, and property. Now, we know there's a quote in the Declaration of Independence pretty close to that, right? And as you read Locke, and you read the Declaration of Independence. Now, who wrote the Declaration of Independence? Thomas Jefferson. So no question was Jefferson and many others of the founders, I wouldn't say disciples of Locke, but certainly people that studied Locke. Okay, so Locke is writing this in the second treatise was written in 1680. So this is about 40 years after Hobbes. Both English, okay? Now, during this time, when you look at the British government and the British church, so in the beginning, everybody was Catholic, right? Okay? And then you have the Protestant Reformation. Yes? So, does anybody know when that was? About 500 years ago. We just had the 500th anniversary in 2017. Okay, 500th anniversary of the Protestant Reformation, where Martin Luther put up his 99 theses. Yes. Okay. So in this, they kind of talk about where he's from, his essay on human understanding. So first of all, we realize here right away that Locke believes in God, okay? And this is really going to impact his philosophy on social contracts, okay? So in the last sentence of that first paragraph, it says, Secretary of Civil Government, which outlined his liberal ideas on government. Okay, we just did the political spectrum. And we kind of learned how modern liberals view the world. Okay, in this sense, this is classic liberalism or classical liberal. All of the founding fathers were classic liberals. What does liberal mean? Or what is it the root of? What word? Liberty. Which means what? Freedom. Okay, so classical liberals believed in freedom. Okay, which is, I don't know, kind of a big theme in America. Freedom. We talk about that a lot. Yes? It's a free country, isn't it? I know when I was a kid, we used to say that, like we could say to our parents. It's a free country. Okay? So, when we look at his theory, believed in a social contract theory, very different, because he had a different view of human nature. He said people are not subjective creatures, rather there is objective truth. There is good and there is evil. There is right, there is wrong. Therefore, morality stems from natural law. Okay. What is that? Where did that come from? Yeah.
It's like the idea that it's kind of the opposite of moral relativism, to where there is morals that, as part of the natural law, that are objective, like truths.
Okay, so he goes on and says this. He says this about morality. That morality exists before, right? Civil society exists. Okay, so morality is part of whose natural law? Created. God. Okay, the natural law is God's law. Okay, And it exists before civil societies exist. So when we're born, human beings have this implanted in them, a knowledge of right and wrong. Okay, now some of that we get from our environment, parents, from the church, and so forth. But before you go and do something wrong, there's that little voice in your head that says, maybe I shouldn't do this. This would be harmful to another person. What's that little voice in our head called?
Conscience.
Where does that come from? Can you point to, like, do a CT scan of somebody's brain and, like, point to the conscience? Where does that come from? Who gave us that?
God.
Do dogs have one? Do cats? Tigers in the jungle? Absolutely not. Okay? This is what he's talking about. Okay? Like, this all comes from God. So there is objective truth. Morality exists under natural law before civil society exists. Okay? He says the state of nature is pre-political but not pre-moral. Okay? He said that in a state of nature, it's perfect liberty to do what is best, not whatever you wanted. It's just a different view of human nature. And I think, do you guys do that? Most of the time, like, do kind of what's best, not whatever you want. Because you know sometimes whatever you want is not really good. You know it's bad. Now, but at the same time, we're human beings. Are we selfish? Yeah. So sometimes we will violate that objective truth. Of course, we call that sin. Okay? So because man is fallen, now, when you're born, are you born good or evil?
Good. Good until you prove yourself.
Good, but you have the stain of evil, of sin. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what you guys teach. That's what they teach at the Protestant church too. Yeah. So he just kind of continues here. Unfortunately, since there was no government, people might steal or otherwise harm another and start a war between families. Most notably, Locke's concern with people stealing or fighting over private property, which is defined as being created whenever somebody mixed their labor with the natural resources of the earth. Okay, so a long time ago, I used to go to the Methodist church. And when my wife and I went to the Methodist church, we had a Sunday morning Bible study before church, and then we'd go to church. Okay, so we met with other people from the church. We called the class Bible 101. We'd take the book of Matthew, we'd study the book of Matthew, and then we move on to a different book. And we did this for like 2 years. And then somebody said, hey, why don't we try something different? Why don't we look at like the history of Christianity in the United States or the impact of something like that? So they all looked at me, the government teacher. Okay, I'm like, okay, I'll try and find something a book we can study. Okay, so I found this. We ordered copies for everybody. It's called Christianity and the Constitution, the Faith of the Founding Fathers. Now this is really good because you learn some of the Founding Fathers were Christians, straight like you and I. Okay, mostly Protestant. Some of them were deists. You guys know what a deist is? They believe in God, but maybe not Jesus Christ as God. So like Ben Franklin. Ben Franklin was a deist. He believed in God, but he wasn't a Christian. Most of them were Christians. Okay, Jefferson, he's got a warped view of religion, but very scholarly. I mean, like he studied Christianity, he studied Islam, he studied a lot of different stuff. In fact, I think he took like his favorite parts of the Bible and wrote his own. That's Jefferson for you. Okay. The more I learn about the guy, the less I like him. But anyhow, he was very important and brilliant and important to our country. Okay. There's a lot of stuff in his personal life, and he's an interesting cat. Okay. And you guys read a biography on Jefferson?
I've seen Hamilton.
Did you read Hamilton by have it over here, right there, by Chernow?
No.
Yeah. This is what the play is based on. I will read to you later on in this book. It's a big one, and pretty dry, but anyhow. Okay, so this was kind of cool. So when I started looking at this book, they have these really cool charts in here. You guys know when you write a paper, you cite your sources, right? So when the founders wrote, they would cite where they got their information, like we do, okay? And so there's records of this. Like you can look up citations from the founders, okay? So if you look at the most cited thinkers by decade, so it goes back to the 1760s, okay? You might have heard of Montesquieu, Blackstone. Any of you guys heard of Blackstone? You were thinking about law, maybe, right? Was that you? Somebody who was thinking about law. As to study law, go into law. I don't know.
Yes, that was
Who?
it was me.
Yeah, okay. Well, if you do, you will find out who Blackstone is. Blackstone is basically credited as the author of English common law. So when we start writing the Constitution, Blackstone is cited a lot, okay? Now, the number one cited thinker in the 1760s was John Locke, okay? In the 1770s, when the Declaration was written, John Locke was the number one cited thinker. The number one cited distribution by decade of different types of authors in the 1760s, the Enlightenment authors, which Locke is part of the Enlightenment. In the 1770s, the number one cited source was the Bible. Okay. Locke uses the Bible for his views on property. Now, you might not like that last sentence of that paragraph when he talks about property and talking about Native Americans. Right? Well, if you don't remember, let me read it. As a side note, Locke concluded that it was okay for Europeans to take land from Native Americans. They did not utilize the raw materials of the land, and therefore it was not their property. Now, I'm not sure a lot of people would agree with that today. Okay? But this was probably partially used by people in the New World. Okay? Now, as far as property itself, when God created the earth, who did he give the earth to? Specifically, Adam and Eve. And then he destroyed it with a flood. And he gave it to who? Noah and his family. Okay? So this is what he is using. He's using Genesis for this idea of the right to property, to own property, which we didn't discuss in here, but if you talk about something called the American dream, you've all heard of the American dream. Now, the American dream is different for everybody, okay? But generally, there's a central heartbeat to it. And for a lot of Americans, that American dream means owning your own home. With a white picket fence, if you will, okay? Or, financial security, safety, Okay, those sorts of things are part of the American dream. So property, guys, this idea of property is very important in the new world, in our world. Okay, and so the founders, who grew up in Europe, in England, where the king could seize your property on a whim, they're going to put this type of stuff in stone. Like, this is a right. Now, when you use this word, I have a right, or the Bill of Rights. This is very important. Locke calls them natural rights. If they're natural rights, who gives them to you? God. Now, this, guys, is huge. Because if God gives you these rights, can they be taken away? If man gives you these rights, can they be taken away? Yes. If they're natural, no. If they're man-made, yes. So when Locke and later Jefferson says an unalienable right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. If you don't believe in God, and you don't believe in objective truth, then how are these rights natural? Well, they're not. And that means they can be taken away. Follow me? So, the impact of Christianity on our system is this right here. This is huge. This is the basic principles that we're founded on with the Declaration of Independence. And Jefferson gets these from Locke, which are grounded in God. Okay, now, my buddy, Mr. O'Connor, that teaches honors government at Northwest High School, cannot tell his students this story. Not in the way I just told it. Now, he can say, this is what they thought. Okay? I can tell you, yeah, I actually believe this is true, that these rights do come from God, and man cannot take them away from him. Or as many said during the American Revolution, over my dead body. You will secure these rights. Okay? Looks like I'm running out of time.
You got a minute.
Okay. So, kind of wrap this up a little bit. Locke says, if government doesn't secure these rights, what can happen? You can overthrow the government. Now listen, by overthrowing the government, revolution, or altering that government, as Jefferson says, altering or abolishing government, that's what Jefferson says. We do that with elections. But if it becomes so destructive of those ends that they take away our rights, we have the right to overthrow the government. Okay? This is what they did in 1775. They wrote this in the Declaration, telling the British, you are not securing our natural rights. So this is why we are declaring our independence, and we are going to fight you for them. And we will die for these rights. Because they were given to us from God, not by a king. Does that make sense? Okay. Have a great weekend, guys.